And literally right now, the reason why you're seeing what I'm doing or you're listening to what I'm doing is because I took the time to ask questions of somebody I knew that had the information. There's an old saying that if you go by yourself, you'll go quickly. But if you go with others, you'll go far. The reason why that thing is so important is because we can learn and actually get better by inviting information into our space. You do not have to solely depend on what you know. Hi, everybody. Lee Scott here. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee, where we want to help you unleash your capacity and level of leadership. We're so glad that you are here. But before we get any further, if you will go on YouTube and all podcasting platforms and search for Leading with Lee and subscribe today, I really believe that you'll be inspired to make a difference in the world around you by the material that I'm sharing on my channel. And if you haven't done it or have never considered it, you can find out more information about me and the ways to connect with me by going to www.leeascott.com and finding out how you can get involved in the things that I'm doing and find about things that I'm trying to move forward in. But today, I'm super excited because today we are celebrating the 4th year anniversary of Leading with Lee. And 4 years ago in 2019, when I started this, I can truly say that it was a labor of love and a labor of enjoyment. I remember coming into this new season, I've been thinking a great deal about how over the years I've gotten to this point. And back in 2019, when I started Leading with Lee on February 9th, this week we're celebrating it. And February 9th is the first day that I did leading. And when I did leading 4 years ago, I never would have imagined that it has become what it became. That year, I had done 3 or 4 seminars at different libraries in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I was living. And it was an empowering time and such an interesting time in my life because I had been working at Walmart and I was trying to figure out how can I use the most of the degree that I had. I had not completely finished my degree in college because of different circumstances and trying to get back in school. And at the time, I was really having a lot of setbacks happen in my life, but I believed that I had something to say. And so I started Leading with Lee based on a conversation I had with one of my best friends, Kyle Sturk, who captured the first episode and captured the first experience of Leading with Lee. And I've shared it as the first few episodes here on the podcasting version of Leading with Lee. And also, if you can go on YouTube, you can go back and watch the whole thing of that particular teaching that I did that day on February 9th, 4 years ago. And what's so great about it is that we can see how far we have come. And in 2020, we had a conversation in the fall of 2019. After doing 3 seminars, we said, hey, man, let's turn this thing into a podcast. And unbeknownst to us, the pandemic happened. COVID-19 happened, and it changed everything. But we were prepared. And that's how we have gotten to this point. And so today, I just want to reflect on this time in my life of doing Leading with Lee, because my subject today is what have I learned as Leading turns 4. Leading turns 4 years old this week, and I'm super excited to just give you some lessons that I have accumulated over this time. Now, before I do anything and go much further, I want to make sure that I always articulate my value piece, which is my definition of leadership. I've been developing this concept about leadership over the last few years by studying and thinking. If you didn't know this, I have 2 degrees actually in the subject of leadership. I got both of my degrees from Oral Roberts University, and I have been doing some studying and also watching and engaging with people, and even in my own life experience of leading teams and organizing teams or coaching people, I have become an expert, particularly in this subject, because I'm passionate about people coming to know their capacity. So I'm going to give you my definition of leadership, and then we're going to get right into the lessons that I've learned, four lessons actually, that I've learned over the past 4 years. My definition of leadership is I believe that leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, personal processes, and organizations in that direction. Leadership is seeing something that has not happened yet and taking people, organizations, and personal processes in that direction. Today, I'm going to talk about these four things, and I'm just going to kind of give them to you at the top so that you can kind of have a framework by which we're going to be talking about these issues. So the four things that I'm going to talk about and principles that I have learned over the last 4 years, and obviously there's more I could share. I could take it's all season to talk about the things that I've learned over the last 4 years, but I want to use these four as the core things that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is number one, become consistent and disciplined. Number two, be willing to learn. Number three, craft, preserve, and protect your voice. And lastly, gratitude. So let's get into the first one. Let's talk about become consistent and disciplined. One thing that I've learned over the last 4 years is this has to be a practice of consistency. Malcolm Gladwell, who I even talked about last week, he talks about this principle of the 10,000 hours principle. And basically the way this principle works, he says that it takes 10,000 hours for an individual to become efficient or excellent at something. And many of us, whether we realize it or not, we have all experienced some level of this. If you don't have a disability or there's something holding you back from being able to function in this, all of us have spent at least 10,000 hours walking. We spent 10,000 hours running, or see, we may have not spent 10,000 hours running. Let me take that back. But we may have spent 10,000 hours walking. Or if you're driving a car, if you learn how to drive a car, you spent at least 10,000 hours of driving a car. Why? Because you did it on a consistent basis, and now it's second nature to you, and you have become efficient or excellent at doing it. There's this book that I read a few years ago when I was working at TTCU Federal Credit Union, and it was this book called The Power of Habit by this gentleman named Charles Duhigg. And in The Power of Habit, he talks about how at a certain point, your brain, when you do something over and over and over again, your brain stops using as much brain power because now your brain is on autopilot because your body knows what to do. And have you ever had to, and I've shared this with people because I found it interesting in his book because he brings up the story, an idea of, have you ever been in a car and you were doing all these different things and you're trying to figure out how in the world did I get home? You ask yourself, I don't know how I got home. I was on my phone, I was reading something, I was talking to somebody, I was doing all these different things, and some kind of way you got home. That is a byproduct of Duhigg's perspective about that principle of how your brain is so wired, hardwired to do specific things that literally you can get to the place you need to get to because it is second nature. And one thing that I have learned over these past 4 years is how I've gotten better is being consistent, is consistently putting in the time and the effort and being disciplined, recording when I don't want to record, recording when I'm sick, recording when I'm happy, recording when I'm sad, recording when I feel like it, recording when I don't feel like it, reading when I feel like it, learning when I feel like it, doing all these different things because I believe in the power of being disciplined and staying consistent. And one thing that I've learned about people is people expect your consistency. You know that this podcast comes out every other Tuesday. Last season, we were sharing episodes every week simply because of the fact that I had not been sharing episodes of Leading with Lee on a podcast version of Leading. It was just on YouTube at the time for season 2. So I was sharing episodes from the previous season as rewinds. But if you've known anything about my podcast and vlog, this is a bi-weekly podcast and vlog. And I have to build in time in my life to do what I need to do to ensure that you are expecting a new episode every other Tuesday. You're expecting me to put out new content because I made a commitment to my audience to give you something every other week, which means that you, whether you realize or not, there's an expectation that you have of me. There's an expectation of the quality of the work, that it's going to be something authentic and powerful, and you expect me to know what I'm talking about. You expect me to do the research. You expect me to really engage the information so that when I get on here, I'm just not rambling about something. I've actually done my due diligence to ensure that as you watch this or listen to this, you will come away with something that inspires you, that empowers you, and that equips you. That expectation should be met because I spent the time by being consistent. I spent the time by being disciplined and sticking to it. And when you expect a person to do that, they should meet that expectation because they have proven that they will do it over time. And one thing that we all are beneficiaries of is other people's consistency just as much as ours. We see it in our friendships, we see it in our relationships, we see it in everywhere we go. You go into a restaurant and even the big, especially chain restaurants, there's an expectation of consistency, right? There's an expectation that that billboard that they have outside says that this is supposed to look this way. This is going to happen this way. You're going to receive your coffee a particular way. You're going to receive your burger a particular way. You expect that because they have built in a standard, or they have built in within their culture a level of consistency because they have developed a discipline. What does that mean for you and I? Is that we can be consistent and we can be disciplined when we actually consistently do something over and over and over again. Don't expect to be perfect at first. Expect to get better and expect to grow because of your consistency and because of your discipline. Number 2, be willing to learn. You can learn from anyone and anything. I can tell you, quite frankly, there's an old colloquialism that we hear all the time. It says that there's nothing new under the sun. Well, that's for the most part very true. And one of the things that I think is fundamental in life is technology has exposed and transformed everything, obviously, but the foundational things are a lot of the same. A lot of the principles of a particular thing are pretty much the same. There is a science to getting really good at something. There's a science to becoming proficient at something. And one thing that I've learned the last 4 years is I can get information from anybody and anywhere. One thing I can tell you that's true is even when I come up with graphic stuff for leading, I spend some time looking at other podcasters. I spend some time looking at other people's YouTube pages and looking at other people's way of sharing the information. I still try to keep some things in order, but I saw, hey, this is the kind of the trend. This is kind of how other people's things look. This is how somebody else's graphics on their social media looks. This is how you see their page. You see some consistency in certain ways. Those things start to influence how I approach what I do. Why? Because I'm willing to learn from anybody and anything. I remember when I first started to do the camera work for Leading with Lee and shooting Leading with Lee, I took some time to watch and ask questions. I remember I had a conversation with the former producer of Leading with Lee, Kyle Sturck, who I talk about all the time, is my dear friend. And Kyle and I was talking specifically about the idea of trying to set up camera, and how should I set up lights, and how should I position my camera, and how should I shoot, and different things like that. And before I even bought them, when I first bought the things that I needed to start shooting on my own, I called Kyle. I said, Kyle, what do you think about this setup? Or what do you think about this camera positioning? Or what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And Kyle gave me some instructions, and that became the thing that I use to get better at what I do. And literally right now, the reason why you're seeing what I'm doing or you're listening to what I'm doing is because I took the time to ask questions of somebody I knew that had the information. There's an old saying that if you go by yourself, you'll go quickly. But if you go with others, you'll go far. The reason why that thing is so important is because we can learn and actually get better by inviting information into our space. You do not have to solely depend on what you know. There may be somebody who knows more than you that can be helpful to you in order for you to advance in your career, advance in your craft. The reason why I became a better speaker is because I took some time earlier in my life to go and learn how to be a better speaker. I shared it before. I got involved in speech and debate in high school. I listened to podcasters. Listen, I'm a podcaster, but I listen to podcasts. Now, I may not listen to people that do the same thing I do or talk about the same subjects that I talk about, but I listen to other people. Why? Because I want to learn from them. I want to see how can I get better? How can I be more efficient? How can I be more effective at what I do? And let's be honest, I've only been doing this for a few years and I don't have a staff. I don't have people doing this with me, but I think I'm pretty decent at what I do because I was willing to learn the information. I talked about this in the first Leading with Lead, that leaders have to be learners. Leaders have to always have an aptitude towards learning. Why? Because when you are willing to learn, you expand your horizons and you expand your ability to make a difference in your space because you're willing to engage new information. I'd like to propose an idea to you that I've been thinking a great deal about, and I think will be super important and super helpful for you. Have you ever considered learning a process from a vantage point or in an area that you are not proficient in or an area where you are not an expert in? Because that might actually be the answer to a new thing that can be happening in your space. If you're a business owner, maybe you should take some time to listen to podcasts or read or watch scientists or engineers share about a particular subject. If you are an artist, you maybe need to take some time to look at some leadership development seminars or look at teachers or look at somebody who does a completely different career than you. That might actually be the answer to a new trend in your respective space. Why? Because you are willing to learn. You are willing to say, you know what, they may have some expertise or certain aptitudes that I don't have. And therefore, because I'm willing to learn or gain something from them, I'm able to be more effective at what I do because I'm willing to look outside of the beltway of what's usual to me or what's normative for me. That's one of the things I think we need more in our culture is that people will cross-pollinate information, is that people will go and have conversations with individuals that may not be like them or may not even think like them or operate in the world like them because they may have an answer for you that can actually propel you forward. Could it be that you're missing out on transforming your life because you are unwilling to learn from anything and anyone? You think that you have to agree with them in order for you to learn from them. That's not the way life works. No, none of us are going to be successful without recognizing that we can learn or do anything. And I promise you, where I've gotten in my life, especially at this point, especially professionally, I've gotten my life a lot of places because I was willing to learn from some people that I didn't come from the same scope as them. I don't want to share this story real quick before we go to break, but some of you may not know I work for a nonprofit, and I've shared this before a little bit here on Leading, but I now work for a nonprofit here in Jackson, Mississippi. It's called Jackson Leadership Foundation. Very quite honestly and very frankly, I did not work in the nonprofit world before now. I worked in corporate America. I worked in sales and retail. It is a very different space. The way you move is very different. The way you operate is very different. So I came into this space with a very corporate mindset, a very organized mindset. I came in this space with a very, hey, we got to do, the same thing I'm doing every single day. My schedule now looks very different from the way it looks look 2 years ago, because I knew every single day that I was going to come in and have to do this, and this. Now, there is a rhythm, there's a methodology, there are some things that I have to accomplish. And let me be very clear about that. It's not aimless, but it looks different. And I'm recognizing the way that I got better at my job is asking questions. It's asking for information from people that have done this longer than me. So I have conversations with people that run organizations in the city of Jackson, and I'm going to shout some of them out, like my boss, Samuel Boland, who has for years worked in this space of the nonprofit world. People like this gentleman named Scott Fortenberry, who has worked in the nonprofit world for a number of years. Lisa Willis, who's worked in the nonprofit world for a number of years. People like Levi Gill and Willie McLean, and all these people I've gotten a chance, and so many more that I could name that I've had conversations with to learn and gain information. Thomas Dan, all these people, I'm having conversations with these folks because I don't have an aptitude for this. I don't know how to do all of this stuff well. Now, I bring my own skills and my uniqueness to this space, but the way that I've gotten better is by asking questions and being willing and humble enough to learn from anyone and anything. I hope that you recognize that the reason why I can do this, have been doing this for 4 years, is because I was willing to learn. I've been learning over the last 4 years. I've gained more material, I've gained more resources, I've gained more insight on this particular subject. So now I'm more efficient at it. I'm more effective at it. I remember in college, and I know we're about to go to break, but I remember in college how one of my professors, Dr. Jay Gary, would always talk about the power of innovation. He was always talking about the future, and it impacted me so deeply and profoundly because it showed me that there are people that are concerned about how can we figure out stuff to make things run more efficiently and more effective. And his understanding of that particular subject actually influenced me in a way that now when I look at information, I'm saying, how can this affect my future or this community that I'm supposed to impact's future? So this is my encouragement for you as we're talking about this, is that you'll be willing to learn from anybody, is that you'll have the courage to ask people questions. You know, one thing we've learned about people is that people love talking about themselves. We enjoy sharing stories about what we've accomplished in our lives. We love talking about what we have done. But the only way we can talk about ourselves is through people asking us questions. My question for you is, will you ask more questions in this particular time in your life? Will you listen more? Will you stop trying to defend what you know? Would you stop trying to defend what you think? Would you take the time to learn? Because I'm telling you, I've seen it happen in the last 4 years of my life. I've learned so much from so many people because I was willing to ask them questions, because I don't want to just go fast. I want to go far. I'm going to take a break right here, and we'll be right back after these messages. Hi, everybody. Lee here, and I want to give some information to you. Do you need someone to host an event or come and speak at your event? You can now book yours truly. Book me for your event by visiting www.leeascott.com. I am so excited to connect with you and do work with you. Much love, and let's get started. And we are back. I'm so glad that you have been with me on this journey as I talk about what I've learned as leading turns 4. And I'm so grateful that you're still here. And I hope that these last 2 points will really impact you in a deep and profound way, because I really want to key in on this third point, because it's something that's super important to me, and something that I've thought a great deal about over the last 4 years, because it's super important. And this: craft, preserve, and protect your voice. I remember a few years ago, I was doing a Facebook Live, and I was doing this thing called Leader Tips Live. It was based off a thing that I did at the first Leading with Lee back in 2019. And I had done it a few times because when I would do Leading with Lee, I was also asked other people to come and speak or be a part of the experience. And I remember someone asked me on this particular Facebook Live, who did I listen to? Who were like my favorite leadership gurus or people that I basically modeled my stuff after. And I had given an honest answer, and I had given authentic answer. I talked about Miles Monroe and people like John Maxwell, and I think I might have mentioned someone else. And then I think what was interesting about that response was in the middle of me saying it, I started to hone in on this. I started to really drive down on this, that actually I need to make very clear that though they might be examples, I'm not them and they are not me. It's really important for you to understand how to not be a copycat. I've talked about this a little bit before, but we live in an environment where people are copying other people because they think if they copy people, that makes them successful. But the reality is authenticity actually produces success. People want to know if this is honestly how you move. People want to know if this is what makes you effective in this space. I say it all the time. Similarity does not mean same. In order for you to truly be successful at something, you have to recognize that there's a particular set of skills and movement that you have in that space. You cannot afford to try to do it exactly as someone else because you will not succeed. It may seem like you're getting all these problems. No. People are drawn to how you specifically do something. And you have to preserve that. You have to protect that. You have to craft that, because the way to the top, or the way to be quote unquote successful, is being fully yourself. Any successful business owner or visionary had to be themselves in a particular space. There's so many examples of folks who went out of their way to do something unique. The Wright brothers, who were successful at getting the first airplanes. Henry Ford was super successful at creating a Model T car. They were doing things that were unusual for their time. People were like, why would you need to do that? Why do we need to fly somewhere? Why do we need to not use a horse and buggy? Right? Like, what horse and buggies are pretty effective. Or people that got involved with locomotives, like, why would we need a train? I want to take 4 months to travel across America. I don't want to take a few days. Or, hey, a few days was just fine with me. Why would I need a few hours? Right? Like, these advancements, there was pushback at some point, but those people begin to keep working at what they were doing because they believed that at some point everybody was going to catch up to them. Everyone in society was going to actually realize that this person is not crazy. This person knows what they're talking about. This person sees something that I don't see. And this person I should be following. How often do we get a chance to choose a new pathway, to choose to protect something that is important to us, to choose to stick to our guns because people are not always going to see it? I was listening to a podcast. It's called R&B Money. It's R&B Money podcast. It's actually hosted by the artist Tank and his friend Jay Valentine, who actually was also an artist. And I recently just had, and it might have been a few months back, but it came up across my YouTube feed. Okay. But I was watching this podcast and they had PJ Morton, who is a soul R&B singer. And PJ Morton is an independent artist. And he talked about how he had to move differently because he didn't have labels. He tried to get on a label and none of the labels were trying to take his sound or take what he was doing uniquely and all these different things. And he even talked about on this podcast how he kept protecting and sticking and preserving his voice. He learned how to do the tickets at the door. He learned how to build a fan base through social media. He learned how to get people to come to venues, and he started going to specific places where he knew he had a lot of viewership. And through that process, that built so much around him. Now this man is a multi-Grammy winning artist because he figured out how to tap into his specific fan base, despite the industry saying that this is what everybody wants. It's the same thing with people like Kevin on Stage, Kevin Fredericks, who is a social media influencer and comedian. He figured out who was the people that were going to respond to his brand of comedy. He even started a whole studio app. It's called Kevin on Stage Studios, and he has a whole app where he is self-financing his projects because he wasn't having success doing it a particular way. And now people are coming to him. He's getting invited to go speak places or go do stand-up places or go to do particular things. Why? Because he was willing to stick to his guns and do what he felt was his brand of doing something. What am I saying to you? You got to preserve that. People are looking for people who seem to know why they are doing what they're doing. Like trends go away quickly. We see it on TikTok. If you're an avid TikTok watcher, like a trend will happen for about three to maybe 5 days or even a week or so. And even when people try to jump on the trend, even if you see it, like you may not get the same response if you were the first or second or third or fourth person to do it. Unless you got a bunch of followers on TikTok and you know, you're winning, right? But the fact of the matter is that trends go by very quickly. They disappear very quickly. People respond to them very quickly. So you have to figure out, how do I stick to what I do really well? How do I get really efficient at protecting what is uniquely me in this space? It doesn't mean that I'm still not learning. It doesn't mean that I'm not consistent, but it means that I'm trying to forge my own path. There's some things that I want to do in my life that may be unusual or may correlate with what I'm doing now. But I realize my path is my path to what I want to do. My story won't look like other people's stories. My resume won't look like other people's resume, but it doesn't mean that I can't do the job. Because I specifically needed that type of experience and that type of exposure in order for me to be effective in the way that I can be effective in that space. You gotta not sell yourself short. Don't underestimate your experience and your exposure. Don't let people tell you what you can and cannot do based on their perception of how you can get to a place. Because it may not be the way that they think it's going to play out. They're not the writers of your story. They're not the author of your ship. They're not the person that's making it happen. The person making it happen, most definitely outside of God, a higher being, is you. You have to do it. You have to say yes. You have to make a decision. Like nobody else is doing that. It's you. And so whatever people are saying about how you should go about doing something, take their opinion, say, okay, you know, take it in consideration, but don't let that be the guiding force on whether or not you should do something. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with that decision. And that gets me to my last point. And I think this is probably the thing that I live with as I celebrate turning 4, is gratitude. I've learned a lot of hard lessons in my life. I've dealt with a lot of different things in my life. And one of the things that I can truly say to you is that I have a lot of gratitude. I'm so grateful for all of you watching and listening over the past 3 years that we've done it this way. And whether you watched whether you watched videos or liked the video on Instagram or Facebook or seen a clip or anything like that, and you saw it and you said, man, okay, this guy's cool, and you commented on it or you shared it with a friend, whether you watched it on YouTube and you thought, well, he's pretty good with his production stuff. He's doing all right. Or whether you listen to it on the podcast version, it doesn't even really matter how you got into this information. What matters to me is that you took out the time to support what I'm doing. And I'm grateful to you. You took out the time to say, you know what, man, I enjoy Lee. I enjoy what he's sharing about. I enjoy what he's talking about. I may not come at it the same way he does, but there's something about that he's sharing that I really, really think is powerful. And I'm really enjoying what he does. I want to say thank you, because I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't take time out of my schedule, time out of my day, time out of my life to read and learn and engage material if I did not think that there was somebody that was going to be impacted by it. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you for all the shares. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the subscriptions. Thank you to the people that unsubscribed. You're like, I thought it was going to be one thing and he gave me something else. Thank you. Because it has made me the podcaster and vlogger that I am today and the leader that I am today. So with that being said, I'm so thankful for the 4 years that we've come through and the 4 years that we've come to. I want to get a special shout out once again to Kyle Sturck for believing in me 5 years ago. Before I even started Leading with Lee and saying, bro, I think you should do it. I want to thank even some of my other friends. I want to thank my parents. I want to thank folks in my life who gave me tips on social media and said, hey, Lee, I think you could do this, right? Like, thank you all. Thank you. And even just recently when I had a poll on what the new graphics should be for Leading, people gave me their opinions. I am grateful to you for sharing that with me. Why? Because it shows me that you care about me succeeding at this. And even getting some of the opportunities that have been afforded to me and shared with me recently, I'm telling you, it's because of people being available, but also me having an attitude of saying, I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to just be thankful for what I have. I don't have a production team. I don't have a squad. I don't have all these people helping me do this. But every time I get in front of this camera, every time I take some time out to share about life, leadership, and legacy, I come in with an attitude of gratitude. And I come in with a mindset that I am doing this because I want people to be empowered, to be inspired, and equipped to make a difference in their world. God bless you. I'll see you next time here on Leading with Lee. And we're going forward in year number 4. See ya. Thank you for watching and or listening to this week's episode of Leading with Lee. If you have not done it yet, subscribe on YouTube and all podcasting platforms. If you want to get more information and connect with me, visit me at www.leeascott.com or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Lee A. Scott II or Lee A. Scott II. So thank you for watching. Much love, and let's get started.